Webinars are here to help you develop competencies, to help you grow in your everyday life and in your workplace. You wrap it all up, and that drives the quality of the output or the quality of the deliverable that you have on a project. Two key drivers are your work breakdown structure and your risk breakdown structure. It drives us and keeps us focused.
PQC International, powered by measurable solutions. We don't compensate effort, we compensate measurable results.
Hello and welcome to the WPQC series of webinars. My name is Meeta and I will be your host for today. Thank you for joining us for Business Analyst and Project Manager, the Power of the Dynamic Duo webinar. Before we start, I do ask that you please type your questions in the chat window throughout the presentation. We have a panel that will take your questions at the end of the presentation. The session is facilitated by Project Management Evangelist and the CEO of PQC International, Frank Payne. Frank has over 20 years of field-tested experience from corporations worldwide and has served as a U.S. Army combat commander. He also has $6.5 billion worth of hands-on experience on hundreds of projects ranging from engineering, process improvement, manufacturing, information technology to construction globally. I would like to thank you once again for attending this webinar and would like to turn it to our speaker for the day, Frank Payne.
Thank you very much for attending this session of the PQC webinar series. Guys, I'm excited today. This is absolutely one of the most fantastic sessions that I love doing because in this session, this is where we talk about relationship. We talk about the relationship between two of the most important people on a project. We're going to be talking about the project manager and the business analyst. The two most important people that drive the success of a project. And today, you know why it's exciting to me? Because I get to talk about somebody that we don't pay attention to a lot. It's the role of the business analyst. So what you to understand today, as we walk through this today, we're going to be diving into talking about the evolution and creation of the power of dynamic duo. So as we begin to get into this, let's lay our roadmap out first. What about what I want you to walk away with? I want to walk away with these following learning objectives. One, I want you to understand, what is a business analyst anyway? Statement of requirements fit into this relationship between the two. How do you conduct a JAD session? And what is a JAD session anyway? And then we're going to wrap it up with how do we bond in the relationship called the power of the dynamic duo. In this work, you need to understand what I call the role transformation. It's the role of the project manager, and you look at the role of the balance, there's some dynamics that goes on here. If you look at the diagram that you see here on the screen, there must be a business opportunity first. An opportunity for something to happen, an opportunity where an organization or a client has a problem. You know, I love problems because problems birth projects. Because if you don't have a problem, you will never have a project. So this piece right here talks about the business opportunity, the opportunity to resolve a problem within your organization or for one of your clients. Next piece that comes up is looking at the problem, opportunity to do verification and validation. Now, this whole blue section that you see here is looking at the relationship and involvement of the business analyst. The business analyst is throughout the life cycle of the project. Business analyst is the one that's going to meet with the client, The business analyst is one that's going to work with the client and gather requirements and make sure they understand risk events on the requirement. The business analyst is the one that I would say need to be bilingual person on your project. They're the one that can speak the business language. They're the one that can speak the technical language. They're the ones that sort of bring that transition together in this whole transformation model that we're talking about here. Then as we begin to move to the next piece, once the business analyst has done his or her part, they're going to go away. Green that you see on the screen here represent now the project manager comes into play. Because the project manager is going to be the one that's driving the execution of what the business analyst has done with the client, i.e. coming up with the requirements, coming up with risk events, all the things that are going to help make both of them a success on a project. Begin to talk about other components and other people. You got, if you're doing a software project, you got application development. In other words, you got other team members that are going to play a role here, but the significance is the relationship between that business analyst and that project manager. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. If you are working in an environment in your company today and you don't have someone on the front end making sure that you have clear requirements that has erased all that ambiguity, if you don't have this in place, success will not be for you. It's important that you understand that relationship between the two. It is critical that we look at this. Now let's take a look at what else goes on here. Still on the same slide here, that little piece of blue that you see at the end of the slide, that little piece of blue talks about that project analyst, that business analyst coming back into play to confirm with the client that everything that client asked for from the beginning of the project has been done to the client's satisfaction. All functionality is there. The business analyst is critical in this role. Now, some say, my goodness, Frank, we afford to have two people playing this role. I understand. You need to understand what I'm telling you. When you fail to do this, you are increasing the risk of failure on your project. Try to figure out how to make this work. Now, let's move to the next piece. When we talk about a business analyst, a person brings a title as a liaison between the business and also who understand the business problem. Now listen to what I just said. Understands the business problem, not the technical problem. We need somebody that understands what is business problem. The interface between the technology people who knows how to create the solution to bring forth the functionality that the client is looking for. Business analyst. I mean, what's the characteristics I'm looking for? What are some of the competencies I'm looking for when I think about that person that's a business analyst? I'm looking for somebody that's an outstanding communicator. Now, an outstanding communicator, somebody that can communicate both verbal. I'm looking for communication. Somebody that got a little bit of charisma, that can make you smile even when you're down and having a bad day. The other one I'm looking for is somebody that enjoys detail, research and recording and documenting what's going on. See, if you're going to begin to understand how to gather requirements up, you can be somebody that loves the research, somebody that has research ability, somebody that's skilled in organizing and managing large amounts of information. You know, somebody that can take all those pieces and bring them in together and make it make sense to somebody. Get rid of ambiguity. Focus on the objective piece, not the subjective piece about what's going on. See, I'm looking for somebody that is customer focused, a people piece in their heart, that can work with people even when people are hard to work with. I'm looking for somebody that's flexible. I don't know about it that's rigid and just will do it their way. I want somebody that's going to be flexible to get what we need to have done and then build a relationship with the client so we get all the information that we need. See, I'm looking for somebody that's compared with the right tools. See, I'm just showing up with the wrong tools and waste the client's time because sometimes you don't have one time to go get what you need. See, these are some of the characteristics I'm looking for in a person that can play the role of a business analyst. It's not about title. It's about what you bring to the table to get the job done. See, that's what I'm looking for when I think about a business analyst. Some of the responsibilities that business analyst must undertake. Because again, in order to make that role of the dynamic duo work, look at it that can understand how to identify the business needs, the business need of the client, how to begin to work with stakeholders, how to begin to look how to pull all the pieces together, working with the people, working with the organization to make this happen. The responsibility there is also to do requirement development. Requirements are those things that the client says, this is what I want. Now notice what I said. The key word is what? H-A-T. Because that's what the business analyst is going to focus on. What the client needs are. Looking for responsibility standpoint, you got to be analyzed, got to be able to validate data. You got to be able to document what's going on. And see, when I validate means that you don't necessarily take everything somebody is saying for face value. You need to go out and validate it. You got to go out and verify it. You can't take what somebody's saying and say, oh, this is the way it is. You got to go back out and verify and validate that it makes sense. Because if you get bad requirements, you get bad results, you get bad execution. The other key role that they play is a facilitator. A facilitator is someone that's acting as a bridge between the client that can drive everybody, bring us all together, make us be able to sing Kumbaya together and fall in love as we bring together requirements. Come about it. That's what I'm talking about. You got to begin to have somebody that has a foot. Because you're getting into the meat of not being able to do that. These are the responsibilities that we talk about a business analyst. Why do you need a business analyst anyway? Why? I mean, I need it. Well, let's look at some statistics. I love talking about analytics. Some of the analytics says this: 66% of software projects are not expected to finish on time, on budget. That's crazy. 66%. We live in a world today where corporations cannot afford to have that level of failure, spend capital dollars, and we can, as project managers, make things happen for them. Look at the second one here. So projects have only 52% of proposed functionality. Now that's crazy. If you running a project, you telling me if I spend $1 million or I spend $5 million on this project that you have responsibility for, you tell me that I am only going to be able to expect statistically that 52% of the functionality that I paid for that I'm going to get? Something's wrong with this picture. Look at the next one. 80% of projects time overrun. I want it, guys. I need a business analyst. I need someone that's going to gather the requirements to help me make my statistics be a lot better than what I'm telling you about right here. It says the average cost of overruns is 43% of your budget. Think about it. If $1 million budget on a project, you mean that my typical statistical overrun is going to be $430,000? Somebody will get fired. Somebody will lose their job. Man, I'm going to run them out of the office on a rail. I can afford to have you running my projects like that. We have to begin to come together and understand these statistics. Understand that analytics speak loud about failures on projects. If one here that really disturbs me says that in the U.S. an IT project had a waste of over $140 billion. While 80 was failed projects against $250 billion in spending. Think about that. That's a lot of money. I tell project managers, I tell you as business analysts, listen to my voice today. Every time there's a layoff in your company, every time there's somebody lose their job in your company, you need to go to the bathroom, go look in the mirror at yourself and say, what did I do wrong as a project manager or business analyst that caused them to lose their job because you run a project the wrong way. You gather requirements or didn't gather requirements the right way, and that project failed or the project did not meet the needs of the client, you need to go back and look in the mirror in the bathroom and ask yourself, what did I do wrong that caused these people to lose their job? See, you need to wake up out there. All business analysts, all project managers need to understand it's your responsibility to help your company be successful. It's your responsibility to help your company move the dial. You need to ask yourself, what have I done today to help my company move the dial? What have I done to help increase revenue? What have I done to help reduce costs? What have I done, come on somebody, to help drive productivity in my company? All project managers hear my voice today. You need to take this very serious. This message is coming to you as a wake-up call. I want you to hear me loud and clear. This is the potential conflict with the balance. Sometimes when you have people that play the dual role, manager, the business analyst is the same human being, there times can be a conflict of interest. Because remember, the business analyst is the client's advocate. The business analyst is the person that the client is going to fall in love with. They now become their trusted advisor. Business analyst is the one that's bilingual on this project. They speak the technical language. They speak the business language. So the client feels real good. They have somebody that's looking out for them. But we play the same role. The business analyst as a manager and you the same person. There's a conflict of interest here. There's a credibility gap. The client, oh, I don't know if I can trust you. You're the one spending the money. You're supposed to be my advocate to make sure my money is spending well. But you're the same person. I see these twins here. They can't get confused. They don't trust you like that. It's like it when you play the same role. They want their own business analyst and they want a manager. Last minute you hear my voice today, say, Frank, our organization been cut back. We don't have people to do this. Somehow, you got to figure out if it's the same person. How to work that role, build confidence and credibility with the client. The client is looking for loyalty. The client is looking for commitment. The client is looking for somebody that they can draw upon, that they can touch, to say, you know what, I can sleep at night because my BA, my business analyst, is looking out for me while I sleep. I can sleep well at night because I trust my BA. They are my trusted advisor. They have a serious role to play. This is a game. You got to build credibility. You got to close that gap. If it's in person, you got to work 10 times as hard to have the client to believe in you. That's somebody that they can trust. Now, project managers get certified. Analysts need to be certified. There's an organization called the International Institute for Business Analysts. Very, very good, great organization. They have the same power and credibility as Project Management Institute. Many of you on this call listen to me about your PMPs and your CMs and your program management certifications. I said after this call that you go out and visit their website. Go out and visit and understand more about the certification that's required of business analysts. There's tools that BAs need to have. I'm in love with you. It's called Caliber RM, which I would have to say is a very, very good program. It allows you to collaborate in requirement gathering and requirement management as you work in a team with your stakeholders and your project team members and all that. It's a web-based system. It allows you to really gather requirements in a smart way. S-M-A-R-T. Speak, measure, agreed to. Everybody knows what smart means, right? Think about that. Walk through the smart model. Walk through the smart process. And it's called Doors by Telelogic. Program, little more price, a little more expensive. But what I like about this program is that it's Microsoft friendly. So anything you do in Microsoft, such as Word, Point, Excel, all those different things, fit well into this program. It's a very Microsoft friendly program. set of tools is Ideal Scope. Scope allows you to do surveys with the stakeholders. It allows you to capture response and do ranking of requirements. And that's important. Let me tell you why that's important. Guys, give you an example. I was working on a couple years ago, major university. When we would go through this process of gathering requirements for the university, we wrote down an ERP solution. And we were done with the requirement. We had over 400 requirements because we had requirements for the School of Business, we had requirements for the undergrad school, we had requirements for the graduate program, we had projects for the School of Divinity, we had School of Law, all kinds of requirements. We had a 400 requirements. That's a big number. We go prioritize those things. We do ranking. Remember, your client have a budget, and many have a limited budget. You not do 400 things on most projects. So this tool, Ideal Scope, allows you to help you rank things, rank requirements. Another one that's pretty neat is Analyst Pro. It really helps the business analyst and the project manager come together to focus on requirement change, look at requirement analysis, and the other beautiful thing here is doing requirement traceability. You know, a lot of times we fail at requirement traceability because we lose sight of where requirements are coming from. We lose sight as to what's wrong with our project as we make changes throughout the project. I know we use change management, change control. Requirement traceability is huge. It is huge. So again, I just share some tools with you that VAs know to do their job exceptionally well. There's some business analyst competencies. I love talking about competencies because competencies allow you to take money to the bank. These are bankable. You can take them to the bank. You can walk in the Kroger with competency and make the cashier smile, you know? I mean, competencies are bankable. For example, you can talk about and have solidified your ability to understand how to do project scope identification. Bankable, guys. When you talk about how to do a real stakeholder analysis, bankable. When you know how to write a real quantitative state of requirements, that's off the chain. When you do due diligence, when you do due diligence, people hug you, love on you, because diligence says you reach out and touch. Don't just take something on paper at face value. Due diligence says I go out and verify and I validate what somebody told me. Trust, but verify. I'm going to say it for you. Trust, but verify. Don't go and look. Hey, I'm telling you the truth. Trust, but verify. And in risk analysis, y'all have heard about risk for years. I need that to death because risk events will happen on every project. Read your competency because, ladies and gentlemen, Murphy, if you hit Murphy before, you haven't ran a project. You know, Murphy today shows up on all your projects. Murphy would not don't come by himself anymore. Because we live in an age of technology, Murphy brings his mama, his cousin, his nephews, Murphy brings the whole family with him now. There were days when Murphy had to come by himself. Risk. If you manage risk, Murphy will manage you. And then get all home, called statement of work. That's the document that gives you the ability to move forward, to begin to activate a project, which moves you into the next step of beginning to create your project charter. Because charter, as you all well know, is a document that gives you the ability and the authority to begin to execute your project and begin to spend your organization dollars. See, ladies and gentlemen, these are bankable competencies for business analysts. Our problem. Dr. JAD, who everybody knows in the area of quality and all that, he said that a project is a problem, come on somebody, scheduled for a solution. See, I think about it, I want to slap myself. I want to slap myself. Think about it. Because when you say a project is a problem, scheduled for a solution, I tell people a lot of times, that, pray for my clients all the time. I wake up in the morning, I say, God, I'm praying for all my clients. My clients have problems, big problems, because that's the fun of working with your clients. When they got problems, you're to make sure those problems meet and get married to a solution. Remember earlier I told you in this session today that problems birth projects. See, if you don't have a problem, you can't have a project. I tell people, if you got a small problem, you got a small project. When you got a big problem, you got a big project. Come on, somebody, because when you got big problems, it's an opportunity for you as a business analyst and a project manager to excel and advance your career. When I think about this kind of stuff, I just want to sit here and smile, because these are things that help us grow as a business analyst and a project manager. Problem, schedule, for solution. I get it about this stuff. And see, to think about a stakeholder analysis, I need to think about the stakeholders. And the types of stakeholders, I want you to write this down. I pull out that. For those of you who haven't been taking notes, write it down and take it with you. Take it back to work and use it. The two types of project, and you think about the stakeholders that's involved. The first type of stakeholder is what I call a project stakeholder. Listen to this. Project stakeholder is anyone who has a vested interest in the outcome of deliverables. One that has a vested interest in the outcome of deliverables. Now think about that. Second type. When you think about the second type of stakeholder, the second of one is a person that is called a go stakeholder. Think about this. A stakeholder is one that has power and influence over your project, but it's part of your project. If you remember this, go stakeholder. Think about the words I just used. Power, influence. Power and influence. Now, let's look at who are the stakeholders. Membership in the area of project stakeholder are your project sponsor, your manager, your project team members, your end users, etc. Now, remember we said these are people here that has a vested interest in the outcome of your deliverables. You gotta know these people. These people should be hired about your project. They're the ones responsible for delivering the functionality. But about the goal stakeholder. The words we said here was what? Power and influence. Everybody say power and influence. Come on. I hear you. Everybody, power and influence. All right. Still in you, but that's all right. But think about it. Who are these? Who fall in this category of go stakeholder? Government in your company. See, these are people that has power and influence over your project, but they are not on your project. For example, government agencies, depending on what kind of project you're doing, the M may show up, the rest may show up, okay? The O may show up. These agencies that are not a part of your project, but they have power and influence over your project. When we talk about stakeholder analysis, a stakeholder is a tool that allows you to look at a couple things about your stakeholders, whether it's the project stakeholders or the goal stakeholders. Because you want to know who has power on your project, who has a little concern on your project. And then you also want to know the sensitivity. So if you look at the diagram on the screen, I want you to look at your top left quadrant. Quadrant 1. Left quadrant. Quadrant 1. Notice what 1 says. It says that the people in that quadrant have a high power, but they have a low level of concern. Look at quad 1, top left-hand corner. Look at the bottom quadrant. That's quad 2. These people that have low power and low concern. So if they have low power and low concern on my project, maybe I shouldn't be too concerned about who falls in that quadrant, right? I'll be ready to talk about that. The bite is quad 3. Quad 3, these are people that have a very high concern about what's going on in your project, but people got low power. Look at the right-hand quad, quad 4. Quad says, wow, these people that have high power and high level of concern. Now, you say, Frank, but who falls mostly in quad 4? In 4, you're going to have your project stakeholders. They're going to be found. They better all up there. Imagine if your project manager fell in quad 2. Remember, 2 is low power, low level of concern. If you find that your project manager is falling in quad 2, fire project manager today. Quickly. You got the wrong project manager. You're doomed to fail. Quick, fire the project manager. This is serious. You look at this diagram and understand when you conduct a true stakeholder analysis, it gives you a clear picture, because when you look at these 4 quadrants, it gives you a message. It puts a picture. The last thing you see on this, these bubbles here, these bubbles are different sizes. See, the larger the bubble, the more sensitive that person or that group of people are. Pay attention to these people that have these big bubbles, because that tells you something also about sensitivity. Stakeholder analysis is not to be taken lightly. This is a function of the business analyst to conduct the stakeholder analysis. This is what you got to do, guys, to be successful. About the statement of requirement. See, remember that when we talk about the statement of requirement, it is the document that brings forth all of the requirements in one place in one document. Because when you do this, this is where you have unapproved by group. Because see, nobody has approved the requirements yet. It's a statement of requirement. It's an unapproved set of requirements that you have gathered from the project stakeholder. I'll say this again. Gathered from the project stakeholders. Stakeholders are critical to success of the requirement gathering process. Without defining the true project stakeholders, you are doomed to fail. And you will fail quickly. Off the cliff quickly. Talk about due diligence fits into 2 categories. Due diligence says that the verification of the requirement and the validation of the requirement. Ladies that hear my voice today, do not add additional risk to your project. Do not add additional ambiguity to your project. Please conduct your due diligence. Please conduct your due diligence. It's absolutely critical. Risk analysis. See, risk is fun because it allows you to look at constraints. What are constraints that we would have on this project based on those specific requirements? Look at constraints on all of your prioritized requirements. Look at constraints on all your prioritized requirements. Now, remember what I said earlier? You may have 400 requirements, you may have 80, but you will prioritize your requirements. Because when you meet with your project stakeholder, when you meet with a project sponsor, they say, look, I do all this stuff. They tell you to focus on the top 20 out of 400 or 80. So conducting constraints on your top whatever, prioritized requirement. The other is assumptions. We all know what assumptions mean. Assumptions increase risk. Every time you assume something on a project, we risk. Risk. You need the risk tolerance of your client. Are they in a position that they take high risk? Or you work with somebody that is risk adverse. Oh my God, I can't take risks. It makes me have heart palpitations. I may have a heart attack. You need to understand that because you as a project manager may be a risk taker. Risk taker. You're a risk taker. And sometimes risk takers scare the heck out of people. You have people jumping off cliffs because you scare them half to death. Understand the tolerance that you're dealing with in your client organization. And then you have a risk breakdown structure. Different than your work breakdown structure. Risk breakdown structure. Look at the requirements and create a risk breakdown structure on the risk events on the project and probability of risk occurring. That's how you break down a risk breakdown. Do a session sometime this year and tell us how to do a risk breakdown structure, because that's another key component of being successful with projects. The work, understand that we'll write this in our last session. We talked a lot about statement of work, so I'm not going to beat that to death today. But didn't get that message, log to our website and go back and listen to the session on the statement of work. But statement of work is a key document, and there are different types of statement of works out there. There's a contract statement of work, there's a preliminary statement of work. There are different types of statement of work that I talked about in our last session. So go take a look at that and enrich yourself. Implement those concepts in your work area today. The statement of work is a critical document. I do want to tell you that the statement of work is never a contract. Say it again. The statement of work is never a contract, because a correctly written statement of work does not have T's and C's, does not have terms and conditions in it. A statement of work is always an attachment to a contract. It is not the contract. Don't get in trouble. Don't get in trouble. Don't have a statement of work and say, oh, we got a contract. No, you don't. It's an attachment to a master service agreement or an attachment to a legal contract. Trouble, boys, you better clear. Now, participants and their role. We identified already the project participants and their role. We talked about the role of the business analyst. We talked about the role of the project manager. We talked about the role of the project stakeholders, and we talked about the role of the goal stakeholder. You got clear about who plays a role. Now, how do you identify that? I always tell people to set up a RACI diagram. The RACI diagram is going to give everybody a clear picture of who's first base, who's on second, and who's doing what, who need to be informed, who's consulting, all these things. So make sure you create a RACI diagram to help you make sure you understand what you got here. When you talk about the scope of a project, the business is the king or queen of the project, because she is going to be one driving the clarity of the scope of the project, because they understand that organization environment, they understand the politics within divisions, they understand the politics of the people, they understand the product or service that's going to be offered up, they understand how to clearly identify all these things that we talk about here. They're the ones that's going to go and say what is, and importantly, what is not part of my project. Because it is just important to understand what is out of scope and what's in scope. You don't want to be making water-cooled decisions, meeting the guy in the hallway and say, oh, we forgot to put some. Well, you got to come back and do this thing right. Make sure you clearly identify in your statement of requirements what's out of scope, so that everybody understands what you are planning to do, what you're going to do, and what you're not planning on doing. It's critical to understand the scope of the project. Develop control process. I'm a strong advocate of putting the change control process in. Because if you don't manage change, like I said earlier, change will manage you. Because if you do not manage change effectively, you now bring risk in a way that will cause you problems. You need to discuss with the business analyst how you want to collect and drive everything. Scope in, make sure we're clear about how to deal with the scope of the project. It's absolutely critical. Another reason why you need a very strong, a very good project analyst that can come in and help us make sure how we do this the right way. It's critical, guys. The sort of project. Now, what about detailed requirements? Now, because understand, we say, what is a requirement? We said, why is it important together and document requirements? We need to show what are critical and need to judge excellent requirements. Remember, I said excellent requirements are what? Excellent requirements are smart. Excellent requirements are smart. Now, sometimes people like to use the 5 W's versus the smart model. That's okay. Because it says the requirement, if I test my requirement, if I test the requirement with the 5 W's, who, when, where, and why, then if the requirements are written and they're testable, I have out all the ambiguity out of my requirement. My requirements are then very clear to everyone, because when I test the requirements, I'm on the right track. I understand the difference between analysis and design, because that can be in trouble if I don't understand. I need to make sure that as I look at my project with my BA, that the 5 core requirement components are there. I make sure that as I drive testability of my requirements, that everybody's on the same sheet of music. It's critical for us to understand how to make this work. Requirements, I'm telling you right now, if you don't have documented requirements, you have no requirements. You have foo-foo. You trust yourself. If you have documented requirements that are testable, clearly written business requirements, clearly written functional requirements, clearly written technical requirements, you have nothing. You wasted your time. You have to fail. Stop, breathe, document these requirements in a statement of requirements. And your stakeholders, your project stakeholders are involved in this process. How do you do stuff? We have the requirements in a JAD session. JAD sessions have been conducted for years. The concept was developed a long time ago by IBM, and it stands for Joint Application Development. It's a process where you bring people together in a room, and you use a whole lot of post-it notes, and you begin to write down what they think are the requirements on post-it notes. It's a process of how we go through. And maybe that's what we need to do. We need to have a session on how to conduct a JAD session in more detail, but it's absolutely it's critical for you to conduct the JAD session, understand how to do it. For those of you that have done it before, it's incredible the amount of information you get. Now, you get more than you need, but that's okay. But you'll be able to understand the requirements and have that same team help you prioritize them. Make sure that the stakeholders, the project stakeholders are in the room participating in this process. It's a workshop type deal. And it's for hours, maybe 8, maybe 4 weeks, depending on the complexity of your project. But I'm telling you, that investment in a JAD session is going to save you a ton of money going forward. It's going to minimize your risk. It's going to motivation with your team. Because when people are clear about what they're supposed to go do, they're going to have fun doing it. When they're clear, they're going to be mad. They're going to be happy. They have ugly faces. They're going to be want to do what you want them to do. And this is very important, guys. So you need to conduct a JAD session and drive it in the right way so that everybody's on the same sheet of music as you march forward, spending the capital dollars of your organization or your client. This is absolutely critical for you to do this. You talk about validating requirements. Why is requirement testing important? Requirement testing important because it drives out what? Everybody's ambiguity. Now, come on. Everybody say ambiguity. Ambiguity is a word you want to stay away from. So testing your requirements is critical to drive out ambiguity. Learn to verify the business requirements are complete. Learn to do and ensure that what you are promising the client can be done. Don't get a promise on something that can't be done. Don't make a promise on something that's going to stress out your team. Don't make promises that you can't fulfill. Test requirements. Test the requirements. It's important that we understand what we're promising. Because promise is something that you got to keep. Your deliverables. It was looking at communication skills. We talk about a BA need to have effective communication skills. I say that the whole team need to have it. Because you have effective communication, we talk about how we need to communicate with our users, with our stakeholders, with our clients, with everybody that's involved in the project. I cannot understate the value of having good communication skills, written and verbal communication skills. You've got to be able to communicate with your client. You've got to communicate with your team. You've got to communicate with the organization that you're serving. And you got to understand the appropriate communication. You got to understand the frequency of the communication. The Institute of Facilitation is another organization I want to introduce you to. Great BAs, not certified BAs, but also what I call master facilitators. And the Master Facilitator Program is a phenomenal organization when you go and begin to look at this. Just that VAs that are doing this frequently throughout the organization, or projects that need to have the same level of confidence and skills, I suggest that you visit the National Institute for Facilitation and be part of it so you can learn how to do facilitation the right way. You may or may not want to become certified. I recommend that you become certified. It's the foundation of what your competencies are. So, this is out. We talked about a lot today. We talked about that person in your organization that's called the business analyst. We've talked about the greatness of that person brings to the organization. We've talked about the seriousness and the importance of that person in the organization. With that famous document that comes out as an output of BA is doing, which is called the Statement of Requirements. The balance is absolutely critical in this role with the Statement of Requirements. That you don't want to take for granted. Because the Statement of Requirements, we said earlier, talks about the requirements, it talks about the risk, it talks about all the assumptions, it talks about constraints. All the things, it deals with prioritized requirements. It talks about what's in scope, what's out of scope. You can get a better document to set off, begin talking about your success. We talk about looking at a JAD session. It's important to bringing people together, the collaborative mode. Talk about what are the issues, what are the problems that you're trying to solve. You don't tie it down in a JAD session talking about how you're going to solve the problem. That's a big mistake. That's why I'm motivated in this session right now to get excited about having to show how to conduct a JAD session, because if it's wrong, it's going to hurt you. Focus on what, not the how. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we close by saying the power of the dynamic duo is absolutely, absolutely critical. When the power of the business analyst who is bilingual, who speaks the business language as well as the technical language, when you bring the power of a project manager, a high-level, high-skill project manager knows how to bring people together, motivate a team, work in the client environment, drive a team to bring forth requirements that better than any analytics that can be out there, that gives you a whole lot more than 52% functionality, than how to be a good steward of a client's money, the power of the dynamic duo. Incredible thing for success. For those out there that not following it all right now, suggest you go back and revisit how you gather requirements, how you're driving projects, because the power of the dynamic duo will change the way you project, change the way you deliver projects. Ladies, I thank you for visiting us today. Thank you for visiting, and I hope you had a great time today. I hope you took a lot of notes. I hope I can use what we just talked about in this session today. Power of the dynamic duo. Now, I'm going to step away because now I have a team that's going to answer any and all of your questions. Have some hard questions. Challenge my team, all right? Because these are folks that's supposed to be the answer to your questions. Challenge them today. Don't let them off the hook. You have a blessed day and have a good time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this very informative session. I'd like to let the audience know that today we have with us a panel of experts in the room. The panel is led by our Chief Commercial Officer, Richard Sevier. Richard has over 25 years of experience working with global companies. His field of expertise comprises project management, business analysis, marketing, and leading several service delivery programs. We also have with us Corbin Hill and Dana Bernard. They're both certified PMPs and are currently leading critical projects for PQC. The first question that we have today is, does a PM need to be a business analyst to some degree?
I got a question. Yes, I believe that to some degree a PM needs to be a business analyst. A lot of the requirements that Frank was mentioning earlier for a BA in terms of project scope identification, risk analysis, creating stakeholder analysis, these are all things that a PM is going to be using on the project. So they need to understand that language. They need to be understanding what's going on that the BA is creating in order to be able to translate that over. He also mentioned that there's almost like a handoff where they're working side by side, and then kind of the PM kind of runs with the baton, if you will. So the project manager needs to understand what the BA is doing, and they kind of need to be able to speak the same language in order to take the requirements that they've created and take them the further step.
Thank you, Corbin. The next question that we have is a BA needed throughout the life cycle of a project? Dana, would you like to answer this question?
Sure. A couple of slides early on in the presentation, Frank had mentioned that the governing group for BAs is IBA, International Institute of Business Analysts, and their definition of a business analyst is to be a liaison among stakeholders in order to elicit, analyze, communicate, and validate requirements for changes to business processes, policies, and systems. But when you look at that definition, you would think that the BA is heavily involved in the beginning stages of a project, i.e. the requirements gathering stage and that really heavy planning and project initiation phase of the project. But if you do have luxury of having a project manager and a BA on a project, then there's usually a dissemination of roles, a split of the responsibilities. Corbin mentioned it earlier, passing of the baton, if you will. And the project manager usually emphasizes the project schedule, the cost, and the resource management. You'll find that the BA works on project requirements, identification, and management. So while a BA's role is heavy in the beginning part of the project, there could be very well be changes throughout the project that will enlist their services again later on.
Thank you, Dana. We have the next question that we have is, does a project manager need to be bilingual as well? Fred, do you want to take this question?
Sure, I can take that question. So the answer to that is absolutely yes. As both Dana and Corbin alluded to, each has their respective responsibilities on the project, but in order for a PM to be successful, they definitely need to understand what the business requirements are that the BA has collected, and ensure that they understand any and all scope changes that happen throughout the life of the project, and last but not least, really understand what the expectations are from the client. So all of that's gathered by the BA, but it needs to be thoroughly understood by the PM.
Thank you, Richard. We do have time for one final question. The final question is, what is better, a general knowledge BA or an SME BA?
Yes, so why don't we tag team on that, because I think we have some different perspectives, and it'll really kind of depend on the project, the environment, the vertical. So Dana's going to take a first crack at it, and Corbin will chime in, and then I'll share my thoughts as well.
Sure, that sounds good.
All right. Well, my take on it is that any BA, regardless of general knowledge or SME, is better than having no BA because of their critical value add to a project. But in my opinion, the requirements or the characteristics that a person has as a BA, it shouldn't matter whether they're a SME or a general knowledge. They should all have the same characteristics where they're able to drill down deep enough to gather those requirements and deliver those requirements to the project manager or project manager successfully. If you have to pick a preference, I would say SME is better, but all of them should be able to follow the same methodology and deliver the same results, regardless of their general knowledge or SME status.
And I'll just piggyback off of that. Again, if you're working in certain fields or certain projects, you may need that level of expertise when you're going from the BA to the project manager. But for most projects, there are certain characteristics that the BA is going to have in terms of drilling down the requirements, conducting the risk analysis, stakeholder analysis. You want them to be general so that they can be used in different areas and different venues, different projects that you have going on. So you don't want them to be too honed into one particular area and not be able to, transfer that information over to various other projects. So in some cases, it is better to use kind of a general business analyst on your project.
And so my take on it is that I agree with both, and it's going to depend, right? So if you're looking at a specific industry, a specific vertical, a specific subcategory of that particular vertical, then you're going to need a BA who's a subject matter expert in that space, who can speak the language, whose vernacular and terminology meets the requirements of the client, right? However, and depending upon, if looking at horizontal type projects, and that would be specific to something like a functional project around HR or around IT, then a general BA would be sufficient, because then there's no specific knowledge that they need based on the vertical. It would really be functional and horizontal.
Well, thank you very much, team, for your input. I'm confident everyone enjoyed this session as much as I did. Before we close for the day, I would like to ask everyone to please take the automatic survey that pops up at the end of the session. We will also be sending up a follow-up email tomorrow with a PDU certificate and a link to this recorded webinar. Before we conclude, I'd like to let you know that we will send out an invitation for our upcoming webinars to all of you shortly. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you and have a wonderful day.